there, I'm Jules. Nice to see you. The word of the day today is anime. You know, like Naruto, or One Piece, or The Apothecary Diaries, or Dan Da Dan. I could go on. I'm kind of a weeb, but it's fine. If you'd like to know why anime is the word of the day, watch my next video and then read the description to find out. Hi babes! We're playing Seduce Me 2 again. We are part 3, I believe. I am interested to see where this is going, but I'm glad that my demon boys are with me finally. Took them long enough of me being in the demon world for them to come rescue me. My god, what took so long? Okay. Oh yeah, and Eric's shirtless at this point. Okay. The thought of food made me relax a bit and forget about the circumstances I was under. The door opened to reveal the other incubi and their wives, holding plates of food. James and Iridessa, however, each carried 2 full plates, passing one to me and Eric.
Oh, thank you, James.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
You'll never guess who prepared it, though.
My mind instantly went to Matthew or James. They were usually the ones who made food when they lived in my house. Still, it could have been Damien as well. But then my mind cycled to the rebel leaders and Diana. We were in their castle as their guest, so it would make sense if they made us food. Looking down at my plate, I noted the selection of food. Fruit slices, bread, cheese, and some other form of meat jerky. It seemed native to the demon world, but it was indeed human food. Using process of elimination, I decided that it was probably Diana.
How did you both sleep? Our rooms are on the opposite end of the hall, so we didn't know how you two were doing.
Did you two get to catch up?
Please, Matthew. They obviously did more than catch up. A bit of Twilight Tango? Sensual salsa? I bet he dipped right in.
Ew. Why you gotta say it like that?
Well...
Yeah, we actually didn't, though. Eric and I looked at each other, ignoring Norn's innuendo as we thought of the seriousness of the situation. Did we want to tell them what was going on? Explain everything. I didn't want Eric to be the one to explain. The spirit was in my body, and it was my problem. I motioned for Eric to eat before turning to the group and starting my explanation. Well, there's something we found out last night. I haven't been in control of myself because of something.
What did you find out?
Wait, you're not saying that... Hey, are you pregnant?
That's what I said. Eric choked. I quickly turned my head to see Eric covering his mouth and coughing almost violently, most likely trying not to suffocate on the food in his mouth. He quickly swallowed his food and smiled painfully at the group.
No. She is not pregnant.
How do you know? Eric was right. This was a whole different matter. For a second, I wondered what Eric thought about the question, but more importantly, we needed to let the group know what was going on.
Is having a child that bad?
The room around me seemed to freeze as the spirit's voice appeared in the air. I looked around and noticed that everyone, including Eric, was still. What?
The icky man doesn't think so.
What do you mean? In the middle of the room, the spirit appeared, making me gasp. It floated over to Eric and spun around his head, making him light up slightly.
Well, if she were pregnant, I'd be able to expand my legacy.
Ew, that's an awful way to think about it. Expand my legacy. What legacy? Eric? Was that really what he was thinking? He wanted children to expand... No, this was a trick. I glared at the orb as it finally moved back to the center of the room. You're lying to me. Whatever you're trying to do won't work.
I'm not doing anything. Just look at him.
I did, wanting to prove the spirit wrong. However, my eyes couldn't lie to me. He had a nervous, almost pondering smile on his face, as if he were keeping quiet about his thoughts. Were the thoughts I heard really Eric's?
He's an icky man.
Would you stop saying that?
It's true. He wants to make babies with you. You heard so yourself.
I mean, that in itself is not icky, but expanding your legacy is kind of creepy. He didn't say that. But in a way, he did. Expand his legacy? Who says that? Then again, the look on his face couldn't lie to me. The more I gazed into his eyes, the more I could see a form of disappointment. Was I overthinking it?
He keeps touching you and trying to make you feel good. He wants to make you have his babies.
I mean, we are getting married. It's not that out of the question. I'm not gonna say anything. I didn't know what to say, truly. I couldn't exactly lie and say that I wasn't somewhat convinced of what I was shown. Still, I wanted to trust in Eric, and we still needed to fix the spirit haunting issue. I looked at the floating orb, seeing it bob up and down in place. So how long do you plan on sticking around?
Sticking around?
How long do you plan on being in my body?
Oh. I don't know.
I didn't know. I wanted to stand up, but I felt my body stay in its place. I guess in whatever phase the spirit had me in, I could only shift my head, but not move from my spot. That only proved that this was in my head. You don't know?
I don't know.
How do you not know?
I just don't. I tried, but I can't get out.
This was proving to be useless. As childlike and innocent sounding this spirit was, this conversation was obviously going to go nowhere. I sighed and lowered my head, closing my eyes.
I was trapped when I died too, you know?
Huh? I looked up at the spirit, suddenly curious. They were trapped when they died? As the world began to move around me, the orb vanished without a trace.
We have a different issue. My princess is being haunted by a spirit.
Wait, so everyone didn't just see that?
A spirit? But I can't hear its thoughts.
You can't catch everything, Damien.
That doesn't make sense. If a spirit's inside of her body, we would have sensed it.
That's the odd part. There's someone within her, but they are not powerful enough to be pinned down. It's as if...
It's a child.
Yes, how did you know?
Spirits of children are extremely versatile, miss. They are smaller and less noticeable than a regular spirit, but their emotions run just as high, if not higher, making them more powerful.
So a child made you fight Eric?
Yes, it also called Eric the Icky Man.
Well, you were for a long time, dude. You can't deny that.
That was before I met my princess.
I looked to Eric as he looked back at me. His eyes were full of love and appreciation as he smiled down at me, making a small blush run across my cheeks. Eric gently lifted his hand and caressed my cheek, making my face warm up at his touch.
You changed me for the better and turned me into a proper man. I would never wish for you to feel that I am disgusting.
Aw. Eric. Eric was so sweet to think of me. I loved him for everything that he was and is. He was occasionally perverted and seductive now and then, but that was part of the charm I fell for. He was still my Eric. As I kissed his cheek, Eric gasped and I could feel a quick forming warmth appear on his cheek under my lips. I pulled away and noticed a red tint across his face, but a loving smile still plastered on his expression. Heh.
Should we leave? They look like they're ready to make those babies now. Ow!
Knock it off, Matthew.
Before anyone could laugh, however, another knock appeared at the door. Who is it?
Diana, dear. May I come in?
Sure, come on in. As Diana entered, the room became silent. Her guard, Seiro, followed behind Diana and stepped into the room as well, closing the door for her. He remained by the door as Diana looked at my plate.
Did you not enjoy breakfast? I can make you something else if you'd like.
Huh? I quickly looked down at my plate, realizing that I had barely touched the food. I shook my head and looked up at Diana. No, this is great. We were just talking.
I see.
Thank you for breakfast, by the way.
My pleasure. I'm sorry that it's not much, but it's something to fill the stomach.
It's all good. It's better than that stew that everyone else was eating.
We had stew?
Trust me, don't worry about it. You're not missing much.
Indeed. Anyways, I came by to ask you something, dear.
Huh? Ask me what?
What exactly is going on? What was controlling you last night when your husband came around?
Right. Diana still didn't know what happened. Well, we were just talking about that. As I stared at Diana, I felt something inside me grow very happy. Why wouldn't I be? She was feeding us and making sure we were at least comfortable. Hell, she was going to break the curse on me and kill the demon lord. At least I hoped she would. Still, something felt odd about the way I felt. I shook my head and looked to Eric. He nodded and looked to Diana, causing her attention to turn to him.
A rogue spirit has taken refuge in her body.
A spirit?
How? We felt no such.
It's a child, Diana.
A mere child? What kind of child has that much anger and sadness that they can control a human body?
My lady, if I may.
Everyone in the room, myself included, looked to Seiro, who had stepped forward by Diana's side. Diana took a moment to watch Seiro, measuring his intentions before nodding and stepping back. With a nod, Seiro turned away from her and looked to me. Seiro stepped once more in my direction before bringing his spear up and pointing it at me. What? Whoa!
What are you doing?
Without answering, Seiro continued to stare at me intensely. The spear in his hand began to glow a bright golden white color, making me that much more concerned.
Sanctus et husexiamentes!
Before anyone could jump at Seiro, the guard leaned forward merely an inch towards me, pressing the spear closer to my body. However, it was stopped by a bright white magic barrier that suddenly formed around my body and the sound of a child screaming. The cry rang violently in my head, causing me to grip my head in pain. Gah! That was horrible.
Princess!
Eric reached for me but found himself pressing against the shield as well, unable to get close to me. The sharp tip of Seiro's spear pressed against the barrier, causing white ripples to wave from it. Seiro pushed the spear harder, trying to pierce through. The screaming, however, intensified in my head with each push.
What in the seven hells?
I've never seen magic like that before.
I can hear it. The spirit is crying inside her head. It's hurting her.
Damn it!
Seiro finally pulled back and stepped away from me. The glow around his spear vanished, and Seiro looked to Diana. The screaming in my mind stopped at last, and the barrier finally vanished, allowing Eric to wrap his arms around me and pull me close to him.
This spirit is extremely powerful, my lady. Powerful enough to block holy magic.
That's impossible.
I quivered in Eric's embrace, feeling the after effects of the sudden event hit my body like a wave. My nerves were vibrating and every hair on my body was on edge. My eyes, despite this, looked to Diana and Seiro. Diana looked at me and suddenly glared.
Clever spirit.
Clever spirit? What do you mean?
Look at who the spirit is haunting. She's practically bleeding endless waves of energy. The spirit must be consuming it to survive and use its abilities.
The entire room looked to me, and I could see in their eyes that she was right. Was I really that full of energy? What kind of energy? How did the amount of energy I had affect this?
The spirit is a demon, then?
Only a demon could make a barrier like that.
But a barrier against holy magic?
It's unheard of.
Not necessarily. If a demon is powerful enough, they can block holy magic, but it takes a large amount of energy.
We have to find another way to expel it. If holy magic won't work, something else will. Spirits can't bind themselves to living bodies forever.
Yeah. We'll get this spirit out one way or another.
Would we? The spirit was powerful enough to fight back against holy magic, which apparently was powerful on its own. I became nervous once again. Eric, feeling me tense up in his arms, gave my body a small squeeze in comfort. I closed my eyes, feeling his warmth slowly but surely calming me down.
Whatever the case may be, I'm sure we've at least weakened it. It shouldn't attempt to control you again, at least for today.
Thank you. Diana ran a hand through her hair and looked around the room, pressing her lips into a fine line.
So, about all of you participating in the war, you all obviously need to train.
Everyone nodded in agreement to Diana's statement. While we weren't battle ready, we still needed to at least know how to defend ourselves. Diana, however, looked to me.
You, most of all.
Huh? Me? I was suddenly confused. How come I was the odd one out that had to be ready the most? The last thing I remembered about me training was that Diana was against the idea altogether. Diana sighed and rubbed her temple.
Apparently, there are guidelines to breaking this curse. Not only do we have to kill the demon lord, but you have to be nearby when it happens for the curse to even break.
Oh my god. That makes no sense. Where did you learn this?
Shadow. He spent the night trying to find alternative ways to break your curse. Unfortunately, we didn't find anything of the sort, but we found the guidelines to breaking it.
Well, it still makes no sense.
Even while it doesn't, it's still better to be safe than sorry. I don't want to kill him and then still have you stuck here because of an error.
I could only sigh and take it in. So I had to be there when the demon lord fell. Great. Diana waved her hand dismissively through the air, breaking my potential thoughts.
Anyway, we can't have you dying on the way there, and we can't monitor you when we're in battle. You should at least know how to defend yourself. That's why we've come up with a solution.
Huh? What solution?
Simple. The other rebel leaders and Sarah have agreed that if you'd like a trainer to enhance your abilities, you can train with one of them.
I stared, seeing Seiro step forward with a nod.
Each of the leaders is proficient in a different area of magic and battle strategy, good enough for self-defense. I can't speak for the others, but I can assure you that with Sero's skill and training methods, you will be well prepared by the time the siege arrives.
Seiro nodded and bowed to me slightly. While I was flattered at the idea, did I really need a trainer? I knew Taekwondo, and I at least knew how to defend myself, demon or not. Then again, we were in the demon world, where magic was the norm. I'll train with him. Sado seemed skilled enough to train me. He was Diana's right hand, after all, and he was the one who apparently stopped the Demon Lord from getting his hands on me. I at least had to give it a shot. Sado nodded and looked to Diana, who crossed her arms.
Very well. You've made a good choice, I assure you.
With that, Diana turned on her heel and left the room.
Finish eating. Afterwards, you should start training.
Everyone in the room nodded their affirmation as Diana and Sado left. Why is Eric still shirtless?
Well, it looks like we'll be busy for the next couple of days.
This'll be fun.
Man, training's gonna suck.
It'll be worth it, though.
Damien's right.
As we all finished eating, everyone left to either train or do things on their own. I left to start my own work, determined to be prepared for what was to come. The Demon Lord wasn't going to win. I wouldn't let him. I chose to train with Sado. He seemed to be very skilled, so I trusted him to train me to the best of his ability. I didn't want to be a silent observer in this war. I would pull my weight. Sado brought me to the Grand Hall, which he had apparently claimed as his own personal training grounds, as Sergeant had to use the official grounds for the army. Personal training grounds?
When I train my lady, I bring her here. That way she is not seen by the army.
Why would her being seen by the army be an issue?
It's not a matter of it being an issue. We simply choose to train together alone.
I nodded. If Diana had her reasons, then that was enough for me. Sado nodded in return before holding his hand out to the side.
Now, do you have a preferred weapon of choice? Choose wisely. You need to focus and master one weapon if you wish to benefit from this training. I won't allow you to change your mind later.
I stared at Sado, unsure of why he would ask me that. However, I closed my eyes and thought to myself for a moment. There were a couple weapons I could think of. I thought of a gun, but what if human guns were powerless here? After all, demons had magic on their side. If they were powerful enough, maybe even a speeding bullet could be blocked with ease. I sighed and thought of what melee weapon I could use. A spear, a sword, surprise me. I'll say surprise me. Sado stared in surprise. What? I was ambitious enough to try anything. Why not? He probably knew more about weapons than I did anyway. Sado then gave me a small smirk before allowing black and purple mist to envelope his hand. I found myself growing nervous. What if he gave me a small dagger or something really hard to learn? I began to regret electing for a surprise. What the hell is that? Eventually, the mist materialized into a strange object, a large lavender triangular blade sticking out from what looked like a round gauntlet. As Sado walked towards me, he formed a copy of the weapon in his other hand and handed both to me, the openings of each gauntlet facing toward me. I raised an eyebrow at him. Was he really expecting me to stick my hand in those?
What, afraid to try something new now?
I shook my head. I had asked for this and was confident enough to try them. I slid my hands into the gauntlets and felt my fingers brush against the inner handles, allowing me to grip the weapons in each hand with ease. I lifted the weapons from Sado's grip and observed them. They seemed very light, almost feather-like, but I could feel energy pulsating from them. What are these?
Gauntlet daggers. The human world has a similar version of these weapons called katars, if I'm not mistaken.
They seem pretty light.
They may be light, but they can be incredibly deadly if used properly. Imagine them as extensions of your arms.
I gulped. Would I be able to learn how to use these properly enough to defend myself? I wasn't sure. Sado walked away from me before forming his spear and gripping it tightly, ready to begin our session.
Trust your instincts. I'll go slow so you can adjust yourself to the weapon. However, I won't remain slow for long.
I stared at Sado, now fully settling into what I had signed up for. I was learning how to defend myself and possibly how to kill someone else. I felt a nervous shiver run up my spine before taking a breath and trying to relax my muscles. Sado seemed to take my breath as my signal to prepare, and he took a step back and readied himself for the stance.
Are you ready?
I nodded. I had asked to be trained. If I wasn't ready then, I wouldn't ever be. Sado crouched down, gripping his spear, before lunging for me, ready to skewer me on its blade. I reflectively jumped away, avoiding the tip of his blade as I stepped to the side. I stared wide-eyed at how far he had thrust his spear, jamming it all the way through the space I was previously in. Was he really trying to kill me? Dodge. I bent back, watching the blade swipe over my body through the air. As I quickly straightened up, I noticed how open his body was for an attack. He was serious. Well, so was I. I felt powerful as I readied to attack him. I lunged in and prepared to pierce him with my own attack. However, Sado moved his spear to cross his body, blocking my attack and pushing me back. I growled at myself for not seeing the strength of his defense. As I landed, though, I saw a small smirk on Sado's face. Was he proud of me, or was he mocking me? Either way, I used the momentum to lunge forward again, continuing our sparring match. We continued to train relentlessly through the day. Each break we had was small, but I understood why. I only had a week to learn how to fight after all. Time wasn't on our side when it came to me learning how to fight, or at least defend myself. As we finished a sparring session and slowed to take another break, I let out a sigh. I was exhausted, but I knew I had to keep going. If the incubi were going to keep training, then I had to keep up as well. Sato let out a small sigh and stretched, wiping some sweat from the side of his brow before looking to me.
Let's take a break for now.
Yeah, good idea. I collapsed onto the floor on my rear and slouched over my crossed legs, thankful to no longer be on my feet. I thought Taekwondo was hard, but fighting with a weapon was proving itself to be even harder. I felt a little envious for people who were able to master weaponry.
I have to admit, I'm impressed. For the first time holding a weapon, you did pretty well. My lady had to train for months to try and use her weapon properly.
Well, what does Diana use? I was curious about her. I knew she had magic, but did she really need a weapon? Of course, if her energy ran out, then she would need some sort of protection. Sato stared wide-eyed at me for a second before smiling softly.
She uses a saber, a curved sword. While regular straight swords are good for piercing your opponent, curved blades are made for slashing and cutting your opponent down. They're a little difficult to maneuver without in-depth training.
Sato looked down at his hand, forming a saber with a black grip and a deep purple blade. It looked like a masterwork blade, despite it forming out of its magic. As Sato stared at it, his smile brightened a bit.
A saber is much more graceful in combat than a regular sword. Anyone can wield it, but it takes a true master of the blade to use a saber properly and make a fight look like an elegant dance.
I was in awe. I could see a soft shadow of adoration in his eyes as he spoke. Did he really adore his mistress that much? You seem to really care for Diana. Sato looked to me with a chuckle.
I don't just care for my lady.
That was obvious. The way he spoke about her spoke volumes of his affections for her. As Sato looked to me, a flash of realization washed over his eyes. What?
You're human, so you would understand.
Understand what?
Love.
I stared at him, knowing the meaning of the word, but not understanding what he meant by saying it. What about love?
Well...
For a moment, Sato looked back to the saber in his hand before shaking his head.
Never mind. It's nothing.
I wanted to ask more, but a pair of footsteps echoed through the room from the door, causing me to turn around and see who it was. Diana, lightly glistening with a thin layer of sweat and wiping her brow, stepped into the room with a smile. I could hear Sato's breath hitch softly as Diana walked in. She did a small hair toss, most likely to get some cool air behind her neck, before looking to her guard and my trainer.
How is training going?
Going fine, my lady. How are the airs?
They're strong, but not strong enough. At least, not yet. It will take more time to get them up to par with where they need to be for the war. They've been in the human world for too long, and they've lost their sense of real battle.
Uh-oh. In haste, Diana looked to me and held up her hand towards me, as if to ask for more forgiveness.
No offense to you, of course.
It's alright. I understood. The human world was vastly different from the demon world, so the boys had become humanized and softened. Still, I was sure that they'd train hard and become better than the demon lord.
Anyway, I was just taking a break and wanted to check in. Had to make sure you didn't kill our guest, Sarah.
I would never!
Diana's laughter filled the room as Sato's face brightened to a hot pink tinge.
I'm merely joking. I trust you, Sarah. Besides, she can take care of herself.
Diana looked at me with a nod and a smile, as if she knew that I'd be okay, at least in Sato's hands.
I'll leave you both be then. I'm sure that after we're finished training, your husband will want to replenish his energy, and it wouldn't do if you were still training here when he finishes.
It's a weird thing to say. With that, Diana turned and walked out of the room. Sato and I kept our eyes on her before I looked over to the suddenly love-struck guard. His eyes were glued to the door that Diana left from, almost unblinking. Sato? Finally, Sato snapped out of it and looked at me, blushing and wide-eyed.
Sorry. Where were we?
Training?
Training! Right. Let's go again.
In a complete reversal, Sato's expression hardened to a serious stare at me. I nodded, knowing that the break we had was now over. Once more, we trained and continued until dinner rolled around. As a soft echo of dinner-time bells reverberated through the halls of the castle, Sato and I went our separate ways, him to his lady, me to my bedroom. I fell onto my bed, exhausted. My body felt completely at the mercy of the fluffy mattress beneath me. Today was rough. Luckily, before I came back to the room, I'd been shown bathrooms where I could relieve myself and bathe properly. At least hygiene wouldn't be an issue. I'd bathed in crystal clear water before returning to my room and flopping into bed like a bum. I heard the door open and close, followed by the soft pattern of labored footsteps walking around the bed and stopping on the other side. I knew it was Eric, but I turned my head to verify my guess. I was correct. However, I felt my face flush at the sight. Eric was shirtless and his skin was beautifully covered in water droplets. His hair was damp and his breathing was labored. He He must have trained hard, if not harder than me at least, and bathed right afterwards. Hi.
Good evening, love.
I could tell that he wanted to flop onto the bed and simply pass out, but something held him back. I tilted my head at him, making Eric smile.
I'm going over what happened today.
And?
Do you feel disgusted by me?
I kept my eyes on Eric, letting my mind wander a bit over him. I still loved him and didn't feel the need to yell at him or push him away. I had to assume the spirit was still resting from Sador's attack. Nope. Eric nodded before climbing into bed and leaning back against the bedpost. I'll cuddle with him. I settled close to him and placed my head on his shoulder. Eric smiled and wrapped an arm around me, holding me close.
It's been a long while since I've trained like that.
Since Malix, right? Eric nodded with a smile at me. I remembered Malix, that damnable monster. He'd wanted to kill the boys and even kidnapped me as bait. Luckily, he didn't last long. During the time he was around, though, Eric had trained hard and done the best he could. I was kind of proud to see him going at it again. I yawned and got ready for bed. There was no use in prolonging sleep. The darkness welcomed me into its embrace as Eric wrapped his arms around me protectively. Huh? The cries of the spirit vibrated through my mind. I knew Eric would take a bit to enter my dreams, but I could only look around as the sound of the spirit whimpering echoed around me in the dark. Hello?
Go away!
Finally, the orb appeared. It wasn't bobbing up and down in the air like it usually had before. It was lying on the ground like a ball. I walked over and crouched before sitting down in front of it. The sound of its whimpers made my heart hurt. Did Sador's attack really hurt it that badly? Even more than that, it was apparently a child. I'm not going to say anything.
Why did you do that?
We just wanted to try and get you out of my body.
Why did you hurt me?
Every word the spirit spoke felt like a knife through my heart. I didn't mean to hurt it, but we had to try. I was certain the intention of the attack was to expel the spirit, not hurt it.
You just like him.
Like him? You mean Eric?
No. The evil man.
Evil man? I stared as the spirit gently lifted itself off the ground and began to slowly bob up and down in front of me.
The evil man that killed me.
My body froze as I suddenly heard the demon lord's laughter all around me. The voice bounced through the air, sending wave upon wave of fear through my body in an endless cycle. However, the spirit didn't react. Was the spirit causing the voice? The spirit lowered itself back down onto the ground and laid still, the purple aura around it still rippling around it.
You're gonna hurt me again.
I'm not saying anything. I felt heartless for not saying anything. I couldn't say that I wasn't going to, but we had to get the spirit out of my body somehow. I felt a hand suddenly place itself on my shoulder, and the demon lord's voice faded into silence. I quickly turned to see Eric, looking down at me with a concerned expression.
Are you all right?
Yeah.
The icky man is back.
Eric ignored the spirit and gently turned my body to face him.
Don't listen to whatever that spirit says. We'll expel it soon enough.
You don't care about her. You just care about babies.
I stared as, instinctively, Eric summoned his tendrils, ready to attack, but his expression melted into concern. Something was holding him back, and it made me a bit worried. Was the spirit telling the truth? The spirit simply faded into the dark without continuing the conflict, leaving us alone. Eric?
Yes, my princess?
Do you want me to be pregnant? I had to know. He reacted so violently towards the spirit at the mention of children. Eric's face, however, contorted from the concern it melted into a look of confusion.
Where is this coming from?
I just want to know. Eric sighed and nodded, making a small lump in my stomach harden. He really wanted me to be pregnant? Before I could speak, though, Eric raised his head with a kind and soft smile.
I would be happy to have you bear my children and for you to be a wonderful mother, but not unless you want to. You would be the one bearing the burden the longest.
My heart skipped multiple beats. I was shocked at his words. Eric continued.
In the demon world, it is a regular occurrence for incubi and succubi to breed as often as possible. It's only natural that I'd want children, princess. However, you are a human, and even more so, you are the one I love. I obey your every command.
Aww. Before my eyes, Eric slowly wrapped his arms around my form and kissed my forehead. The warmth of his embrace made my entire body melt, but I wrapped my arms around him in return.
We're not even married yet. We can probably wait until after we say our vows before we think about children.
A small laugh erupted from me as I nuzzled Eric's chest. He was right. We didn't have to think about it now. I shouldn't have let the idea get to me. Right. I nodded in reply, just wanting to completely immerse myself in Eric's arms. The night passed by and morning rose. To my surprise, I woke up alone. I scanned the room for Eric, but found myself in the room by myself. Eric?
He left to go train with his brothers, sweetie.
I turned my head to the sound of Diana's voice. The door was open with Diana standing in the archway, holding a tray of pancakes. My stomach growled at the sight, but something in my heart felt giddy as well at seeing Diana with food.
Here, something warm today.
Thank you. Diana passed me the plate as I began to eat. I knew that I had to work hard myself today, so I needed all the energy I could get. Diana, however, watched me as I ate. As her gaze got the better of my nerves, I looked at her with a confused look. What?
Do you know the child that's in your body?
I shook my head, making Diana press her lips together in an irritated line. I felt a little bad that I couldn't be of more help, but the spirit didn't have a name, at least not one I knew of. Diana shook her head and leaned against the wall, crossing her arms and legs.
Well, we'll be able to expel it soon enough. I have Shadow in charge of figuring out how to sever the ties that spirit has on your body and forcing it free.
My mind instantly froze. My memory brought up images of the crying spirit and the tears it wept as it had entered my dreams. Would this new method hurt the spirit? Diana stared in shock at my question.
You're concerned for the spirit's safety over your own.
No. We really heard it last time. It was crying. Diana clicked her teeth and shook her head.
That spirit is clinging to you and using its emotions to make you feel sorry for it. It wants you to love it, so you will let it stay in your body.
Was that really the case? A child who was hurt cries mostly when they're seriously hurting. But what if Diana was right? What if it was trying to manipulate me? There were too many questions in my head. I shook out my thoughts and continued to eat, finishing the pancakes. Diana pushed herself off the wall and began to leave the room, but stopped to look back at me with a concerned face.
Does the spirit ever enter your dreams?
Yes, it does. Diana stared at me for a moment, most likely trying to form her thoughts into words before speaking. When she did, I couldn't stop myself from going wide-eyed.
You know, there is a way we can stop the spirit from communicating with you until we can expel it.
I stared in shock. Why wasn't this brought up before? Diana grimaced at my expression and sighed.
The spirit is a child, and is most likely repulsed by romance and sex. Am I correct?
Yeah, but what does that have to do with stopping it?
The spirit is feeding on and using your energy. The only way to stop it is to drain yourself of energy.
She wasn't serious, was she? She expected me to give Eric all of my energy all the time? What about my training? Diana turned fully to me and crossed her arms.
Essentially, after training, give your remaining energy to your fiancé. Kiss, hug, fuck, it doesn't matter. As long as your energy is completely drained. You'll sleep, and because you'll have no energy, the spirit won't be able to appear in your dreams. You'll have an empty sleep.
Okay, I guess. It made sense, but at the same time, I felt a little out of place. Eric needed my energy to survive, yes, but to give him all of my energy? Part of me felt a little excited to do it, while the other side of me felt that it was completely wrong to give energy for that reason. Diana shrugged, breaking my thoughts and giving me my full attention once again.
It's up to you. We should have the means to expel the spirit in a day or two.
Thank you. I was curious, however, why Diana was interested in helping me. She was already doing so much for me and the others by helping me get back to the human world. Before Diana could turn to leave, I slid up from the bed. Diana, why are you helping us with this anyway? Diana's gaze burned into mine as her expression softened. Something in her eyes showed a form of weakness, almost reflecting the eyes of an innocent child. What the?
You may not believe it, but I do actually enjoy aiding people. When I can, at least.
I could only stare at Diana in surprise. I could tell she was being genuine just from the sound of her voice, and the look in her eyes made me feel somehow like crying. For some reason, I found myself dropping my empty plate on the floor and rushing to Diana, hugging her tightly. Diana tensed within my arms and stared wide-eyed at me. I couldn't stop myself from hugging her body.
What the?
I wasn't in control of myself. What was going on? Help me.
Dear, what are you?
I didn't speak again. I wanted to, but I couldn't. Was the spirit in control again? Diana finally relaxed in my arms and wrapped her arms around my form, petting over my hair gently.
How pitiful.
With each stroke, I felt anxiety wane and clear from my body. From where they came, I would never know, but I couldn't do anything but allow it to pass. Diana seemed to be some sort of comfort for the spirit.
However you got into this body, we will free you, child.
I felt myself nod. However, I couldn't stop myself from feeling a strong energy pull from my body. Was Diana draining my energy? Yeah, you can take it. I don't care. She was taking my energy so that the spirit couldn't control me. I had to let her do it. As my body became weaker and weaker, the control of my body became more and more obtainable. Finally, my body felt light, but I found function in my nerves and limbs to function on my own coalition.
Are you yourself again?
Yes? Diana nodded before releasing me and looking down at me. To my surprise, her eyes were glowing a bright gold, probably from the energy she had taken from me. However, it had to be done for me to regain my body. Diana's eyes returned to their normal red color as she smiled.
For now, rest a bit. You'll be able to regain some energy and be able to train as if nothing had happened. As long as you're not brimming with it, the spirit shouldn't be able to take control of you again.
That makes sense. I nodded in reply, finding myself step back and slip back onto the bed behind me. I held my head, feeling slightly dizzy from the experience. The door opened and closed, so I assumed that Diana had left me alone. My heart felt at peace for some reason, even feeling as weak as I did. Was the spirit appeased with Diana's intervention? I couldn't see why it would have been.
She's very special. That's why.
The echo of the spirit's voice reverberated through my mind, but as I waited for it to explain, no further response came. I let out a sigh. The spirit was gone for now, and I had full control. For now. Rest until training. I went to the Grand Hall, knowing Seiro would either be there expecting me or would arrive there shortly after me. Nevertheless, I was ready to train again with him. What I didn't expect was seeing Seiro and Diana in the room. I quickly ducked back around the corner and listened, not wanting to disturb them if they were talking.
That damn little... How dare she...
My lady, please, calm down.
Wait, what? What was going on?
No, Seiro, it is not all right. That selfish brat had the nerve to...
Isaiah, please. I'm all right, I swear.
Stop talking and let me finish.
Diana's harsh tone echoed through the hall out the doorway before a soft sigh followed. I peered around the corner and watched as Diana ran her hand along Seiro's cheek gingerly, tracing a mark on it with her fingers. Radiant purple light emanated from her hand as Diana glided it back and forth over Seiro's skin. Seiro, however, had a small smile painted over his lips as he watched her work.
Damn her to the deepest pits of hell.
You're being too harsh, my lady.
Buskaya is being a selfish brat, Seiro. I saved her from dying, and this is how she repays me? Ungrateful little...
I didn't understand what was happening, but I could tell there was another woman involved, someone named Buskaya. What was really odd was that Diana was acting strange. She was upset over something a girl did to Seiro. It was kind of cute, but it was not what I expected from Diana.
You're being adorable right now.
Diana suddenly stopped moving and looked up at Seiro in surprise. A large blush splashed across her cheeks. Seiro, growing bolder, gently lifted a hand up between them and placed it under her chin, lifting her head slightly.
I promise that I'm all right. She barely scratched me.
But she...
Loves her mistress very much, just like I do. She couldn't help it. I did try to surprise you, after all. She was startled and wanted to protect you, just like I would have.
Diana grumbled, pressing her lips into a fine line as she stared down at his chest.
She still attacked you.
Which I'm sure she's very sorry for. Let it go.
Seiro moved his hand to cup Diana's cheek, rubbing his thumb along her cheekbone. Diana closed her eyes, but didn't lean into his hand.
You know, you didn't yell at me for saying your name.
My priority was not correcting you.
You were concerned about me.
Yes, I was. Why wouldn't I be?
Seiro frowned a bit as Diana opened her eyes and looked up at him, trying to appear unfazed at his teasing. However, the blush that still radiated from her face didn't lie.
Why are you concerned about me, Isaiah? You've protected me my whole life when it's my job to protect you. You didn't correct me again.
Silence followed as Seiro waited for her to answer. I was curious myself, especially since she seemed to not reciprocate Seiro's feelings. Diana closed her eyes and took a small breath before finally replying.
I care about you, Seiro. You've been by my side ever since we were mere children. Every time you've gotten hurt,
I watched in awe as Diana brought her hand up and ran her fingers along the scar on his chest between the lapels of his jacket. Seiro stared as Diana traced around it, her face painted in sadness.
I know you vowed to protect me with your life, but that doesn't mean you must accept every wound on your body as insignificant.
Diana closed her eyes, forming a fist against Seiro's chest and clenching it hard. The scar must have had some significance to make her that upset. I bit my lower lip. I was watching this unfold, unsure of what to do. Should I leave them be? Should I interrupt? I did have to train. I'll let them finish. I didn't want to be rude. Whatever they had to settle, I needed to be patient. I stuck close to the wall behind me and listened further, peeking to barely see what was going on.
It still bothers me. I thought I was going to lose you that day.
But you stepped in.
I did. That was the day before you signed your life away to me. A stupid decision.
I stared wide-eyed as Seiro cupped Diana's cheek and forced her to look up at him, making her gasp and meet his gaze in surprise.
Stop. I won't let you think that my decision was a mistake.
Diana closed her eyes and leaned her cheek ever so slightly against Sero's hand, making him visibly inhale a breath of surprise.
I don't think I will ever understand you. Even after all of these years, I still don't understand your devotion.
Diana let out a small sigh before stepping away and looking up at Sero with a serious expression.
I should go. The boys will be waiting for me to train them, and your student will be here soon.
Without letting Sero reply, Diana turned and walked towards the door. I stepped away from my hiding spot, not wanting Diana to know I was eavesdropping. As I came into her view, she froze for a second before continuing on out of the room and down the hall. Sero watched as she left, staring at the back of her head until it vanished beyond the doorframe. I looked over and finally walked towards Sero, not wanting to interrupt his gaze with my presence.
She really can't see it.
Sero finally turned and looked at me with his eyes drowned in hopelessness. It was almost heartbreaking to see his face so heavy and downtrodden. He seemed to have completely confided in me with his new expression, because I was positive that this was an emotion he had very well for most everyone. Sero finally looked to the ground.
My lady doesn't understand love. She's always been told that love for her is impossible because of who she is, no matter how much she dreams of it. Because of that, she can't recognize it, even when it's standing right in front of her.
There has to be a way. It was a matter of circumstance. She needed to see his love for her. If she was bred to accept that love didn't exist, then we needed to prove that what she knew was wrong. Sero looked up at me in surprise, a small glimmer of hope rekindling at my words.
You really think that she...
I know she can. I mean, look at me. I'm going to be married to the man I love. Surely love exists, even for demons. I watched with a smile as I saw happiness slowly seep back into Sero's expression. He couldn't give up on her. He'd be able to show her his love somehow. After a brief moment, Sero let out a sigh, closing his eyes. He turned to me, and when he opened his eyes, my relentless trainer had appeared with a serious look on his face. Without having to say anything to me, he stepped back and summoned his spear. That was a fast turnaround. Okay. I think I'm gonna stop it here, because we're about to spar, and I don't want to get into sparring right now. So, this is a really interesting game. I swear that the purple orb is like my baby. Me and Eric's baby. I'm touching my stomach. But I guess not, because it likes Diana. Maybe it was Diana's baby. I don't know. No, I don't think it was Diana's baby. I think we would know if she had been pregnant. But anyway, this is confusing and complicated, and I'm so here for it. So I hope you had fun, because I had fun, and I will see you later.